Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and Beyond MCU fan podcast. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
It's going good. Casey, we got answers this week. Probably a lot more answers than I anticipated getting.
Yeah, I was not anticipating this week's episode.
And off the top here, I just want to say this is probably we're talking about episode 6, if you happen to listen out of order here. But we're talking about episode 6 of Agatha All Along. And I think this is probably the best episode of the show and one of the best Disney Plus Marvel series episodes that we've gotten so far.
Yeah, this episode was fantastic. It really was. I texted you that night, um, or the next day, whenever it was. I did something I don't normally do when I watch these. Is I pause and rewind, and usually I just watch it straight through. If I watch an episode or something a second time, that's when I'll go through and like look for little details or pause and rewind. And did I hear that right, or what was that? This one, I had to do it from the get go.
Yeah, there was a lot of information coming through the episode, and let me give the information first. I guess this is episode 6, "Familiar by Thy Side," directed by Ganja Montero, written by Jason Rostovsky, and premiered October 16th, 2024 on Disney Plus. And its description here was: familiar teen is much more than he seems, and his connections to the rest of the coven are revealed. So we were speculating last week, like, all right, we've had 2 trials done. Like, what's the next thing? And then I think it was like after we were done recording, but before I got the episode up, we figured out that this upcoming week was going to be the uh, flashback episode, the one that we just watched, um, and that made me really excited for it because I was like, I want that information. And one thing that they did, I think, really well was give us all of those pieces of information. And we still have some questions, obviously, but I like the fact that we have almost every answer to every question right now as we go into the last stretch, the last 3 episodes. I'm going to compare this a little bit to the other Disney Plus show that released this year called The Acolyte, which was a Star Wars show. And for me, the first 5 episodes of that show were awesome. The last 3 kind of failed me. And part of the reason why was I feel like at the end of episode 5 they had a lot of freedom to do whatever they wanted, because I felt like some of the answers were there for the questions, but there was still a big question hanging over that they didn't reveal until the penultimate episode. And then it felt like after that there was very little time to get to after that stuff. Well, I feel like this show has handled that better because what they did in The Acolyte was 2 flashbacks episodes, episode 3 and episode 7. And episode 3 showed you one point of view, but still left you with so many questions. And then episode 7 revealed the other point of view and still kind of left you with so many questions. So then it sets up the last episode of having to rush everything. I feel like in this one so far, with this one flashback they've given us, has given me enough to now know, like, all right, I don't need another point of view of those flashbacks. We have the answers I need, and now we can go to these last 3 episodes and kind of look at what is and wrap it up in those 3 episodes. 2 weeks, of course, because the finale is the final 2. But I don't know. Do you feel like you've gotten a lot of your answers before we dive into, like, because there's 3 answers I think to questions that are presented in this episode, maybe more.
I do. I think this. So after last week, I want to say a couple of days later or so is when like a preview for this week's episode popped up. and I think I saw it on my Twitter timeline first, and it was a couple shots, and then it was like the preview trailer for this week's episode. And then we kind of like once I saw that, obviously you see everything without context, right? So there was a shot of like Billy. It there was a shot of Teen in the car, like looking out the window, right? There was one of the stills that came out, and there was a couple other things. So, but all of the imagery pretty much concerned Teen. So it was like, okay, this one is going to be a teen centric episode. Like we're I got the gist of like, okay, we're going to find out more about him and what actually happened or how he got to be where he was. Like this one's going to focus on him. So I was like, okay, I'm up for that journey. I did not anticipate that journey was going to be the journey that it was. Once again, anybody who listens to this knows, probably tired of hearing me say, I don't know much about any of these characters because I've never been into the comics. So for me, anything that Disney Plus does is the only breadth of knowledge I have on these characters and these people, right? Like, that's it. I have no knowledge anywhere else of who they are, where they came from, what's going on, anything like that. So I just have to take it at its word of this is what it is. And for the most part, this is what it is for the story that they're telling. I know you can get into the multiverse aspect of it and everything else, and you can, but they're telling the story of this. What are we? 616, right? They're,
Yeah.
they're telling the story of what's happening on Earth 616. Okay, cool. Side note, I really want to know how they got that number. Or like, is that like 616 Earths out of whatever number? Like, what's going on?
Yes, they actually got that number for the MCU because that's the main comic continuity as well. Is 616. I don't know how they came around to that number. I think it's just because it's like what I would assume is I think the first comic was in 61 with the Fantastic Four, and then I would assume the six after it is just nice symmetrical. That would be my guess, but I don't know.
Okay, I'll buy that. Um, but I learned a lot that I had absolutely no knowledge on. Um, Kind of some questions. It answered some questions I didn't even know I had. It revealed some connections to things I didn't know were there. Um, and like I said, I found myself riveted throughout because I was trying to I was trying to figure any and every little thing out that I could because I know they like to put stuff in the background or like when they're using a computer and they're looking at computer screens or in this case Teen's room and stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, I need to absorb all of this information.
So just to clarify here, from what I hear here is that Earth 616 was just a arbitrarily chosen number by Alan Moore and has no significant meaning. So there you go.
Okay, sure.
All right, so let's get into it here with what those reveals were, because we've also this is a proper sequel to WandaVision, not just because of Agatha, but because of Billy and because of another character that makes a reappearance in this episode that we'll get to here. But we are introduced to William Kaplan, a teenager from Eastview, and he's celebrating his bar mitzvah. And at the bar
Little
mitzvah,
Jewish
they have
guy.
a at the bar mitzvah they have a palm reader, who it turns out to be Lilia.
So this was okay. So once again, no knowledge. I didn't know he was a little Jewish guy, and apparently that's taken from the comic as well. He is a little Jewish guy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now I've seen some discourse online. Some people didn't like it, but apparently there's a lot of people saying they handled the entire bar mitzvah aspect of it with a lot of care. And
I believe there's a few writers that are Jewish on the staff. So
they handled the ceremony with a lot of care. Like it wasn't something that was just thrown together. Like it was taken from like what actually happens in a bar mitzvah, right?
right,
Um, and I, I one part of that I think is probably just because Disney's such a huge corporation. Like there might have been some lawyers involved. Like, hey, if we're gonna do this aspect of it, like we have to get it done as well as humanly possible because we are not stepping in this minefield, especially in the climate we live in, right?
right.
Two, I think they wanted to do it the right way, and I think they really did. First question we get answered uh, is well, actually, question I didn't know I needed answered. I guess Eastview and Westview are in New Jersey, or close enough to New Jersey that they have New Jersey license plates.
Yeah, I thought we knew that. I think Westview was revealed to be New Jersey in WandaVision.
Might have. In all fairness, it was 3 years ago, and I've had some head
Yeah,
bump.
it's been a bit.
I might have forgot that, or it might have been something that just kind of done fleeting and so long ago. Uh, I like the emergence of Lilia here. And as soon as I saw like palm readings, I was like, "Is that going to be who I think it is?" And then I saw it, and that's the first. As soon as I was like, "Oh, this is getting good right off the bat."
Hmm. And we find out the first big answer is who cast the sigil. It's Lilia.
Yes.
And she doesn't remember it because, of course, like they said earlier, that it makes the person who cast it forget it. So, like, she has, she
She kind of forgot it
kind of has
immediately.
forgot it immediately. I think there's another reason why she forgets it immediately too. I'm going to give you a quick theory after we discuss this, but she says that his lifeline right on his palm is broken into two.
Yeah.
Um, so my theory here is we've seen Lilia with her divination, right, has been experiencing stuff out of time, right? The try to save Agatha reference she makes, some of these things that she's been saying where she's referring to things um, that
Hadn't happened yet.
actually like haven't happened yet. I'm thinking at this point she is experiencing this kind of out of that time as well, meaning like the Lilia that is casting the sigil might have been one that already knows him. If that's a theory that makes sense. Like is one of the ones like as she's been experiencing stuff and saying stuff out of order, maybe like she divined, right, that she needed to make this sigil because of being able to see ahead and knowing who this kid turns out being because this is before he's even a witch. So she wanted to make sure that this kid was protected for some reason. I think it's because she knows who he is. And then she forgets because one, she cast it, and two, because maybe then she's waking back up into her like now self, like her today self at that
Yeah, I
time.
kind of I kind of got the same gist there. Um, I think wow, I think it's crazy lucky that dude left his coat behind. Like, imagine if he doesn't. This whole thing maybe doesn't
Yeah,
happen. Um,
right.
but the fear that she showed when she's like, "Your lifeline's broken in two," but then she has to immediately like get that fear off of her face because hey, this is that little guy's big day, right?
He's a
The whole
man.
day's the whole day's about him, and it's his big ceremony. You don't want to scare the guy, right? It's not cool. Two, I think she does see exactly what's going to happen. Like, oh, you're not meant for this world. You're going to die, right? Can't really
Hmm.
tell somebody something like that. Like like under these circumstances, I think normal palm reading, maybe you can do that, maybe not. I don't know. Can't imagine. I imagine you might get some repeat business, but maybe not a ton, right? So most of these customers that come in, I imagine are probably like drunken bachelorette parties, frat boy things. They come in for one quick thing for like a fun thing to do, and then you never see him again, right? Um, but once again, you also don't want to scare this guy on his big day. He's still got the rest of the ceremony, the rest of his party to attend to. But yeah, she definitely saw some things were about to go down, and then the fact that she was able to snap out and not remember anything right off the bat, like wow.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking like that part of it was present day Lilia to flashback Lilia and back, and then uh, we also know that the sigil works on on the
Whoever
person that
cast it.
casts it as well. Uh, so we also have so he's leaving, right? Because the cops come, they say everybody has to evacuate because something's going on in Westview, right? And
The
at this
Westview
point,
anomalies acting up or whatever it is.
yes, which they're referring to the hex created by Wanda, and it begins to start falling. This is when the hex is getting broken, and um, during this car ride here, Billy's or William's, sorry, family gets into a car accident, and this kills William.
Okay,
We
did
actually do
you?
hear some of the WandaVision stuff on the radio
I
too,
was
which
gonna
is
ask,
cool.
did you catch that when you first listened when you first watched it?
Yes, yeah.
I I think that was the first thing I rewound because I was like, is that
Do you know what
Vision
scene
and
it was?
Wanda?
Like, what were they saying? Do you know?
I don't. I wasn't able to track that down. I didn't really look into it too much online. I
Let me
know
see if I can
someone
find.
did compare it. Someone did compare it to whatever scene it was, and they were able to find it. But it was one of those when it was Elizabeth Olsen's voice. I heard that voice, and I was like,
Yes,
"Wait a minute, that can't be what I think it is." And I rewound it. I think I rewound it like 3 or 4 times, and then I caught Vision's voice, and I was like, "Oh, they're catching this stuff on the radio." And honestly, I thought they were in Westview. I didn't know they were in Eastview until this happened.
right. Um, let's see. Okay, so also Lilia mentions that the tower reversed, which is a nod to a tarot card. The tower. This is why he's like, I thought you were palm reading, right? So when it is reversed, it apparently typically signifies personal transformation, fear of change, and averting disaster, which refers to him getting in the accident there. Um, let's see if I can find any reference to. Okay, so you can hear on the radio playing snippets from Wanda and Vision's conversation in WandaVision episode 1, which is when he says, "My wife and her flying saucers," and she says, "My husband and his indestructible head." Um, okay, so that's what scene is that. Good answer. Okay, I was
And
wondering if it
then,
would be like an early episode or closer to when the hex was falling. So that's why I was like, I need to figure out what this was.
yeah, but then, you get him kind of looking out the window and you see the big red bubble that was engulfing
Yep.
Westview kind of shrinking and collapsing. And honestly, I had forgotten so much that happened during WandaVision. I may need to watch that again just because
Hmm.
I completely forgot. Like I remember the basics of the story, but I just kind of
Right.
forgot
Right.
like exactly what happened. And I was like, oh yeah, there was kind of something over the town.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
been a bit.
the accident happened, and then you're like, oh damn.
Yeah, and it what he hit they hit a tree that then like the that really only hits his side of the car and his area of the car, so he's the only one that's like really injured compared to his parents. And they don't see that he's breathing, so they get out trying to flag down cops, as you see the cops flying by to deal with the WandaVision events. And we learned before that Alice was a former paramedic or cop or something, and here she comes to assist. And I guess she doesn't, and that's what I was starting to wonder too. I was like, oh, would she remember him? No, I guess the sigil protects that as well.
Well, not only that, but
It's
it
also
was
been 3
also
years, but
yeah, it's also been 3 years. It's been a while, so who's to say? I think
so
another thing I picked up on, and it's always with any TV show or movie when you start hearing like the heartbeat, you know, when you can actually start hearing the
yeah.
heartbeat, you're like, oh, this isn't this person's a goner right here.
So there was an interview with Jack Schaefer about just the show in general after this episode. And there was a reference to a scene that Alice had with Billy where she um was trying to interview him after the accident, right? And when he says his name, she can't get it because of the sigil. I'm trying to see if I have it listed here. I have the interview pulled up, but I'm just trying to figure out where exactly in this interview it is.
So like when I saw that, when I saw Alice pop up, I was like, oh, okay, here's a second. So at some point we'll get the third witch as well. Um, and then we get another appearance later as well. Um, but so seeing Alice pop up, especially after we lost her not too long ago, it's good to see her again at least. What I did not know is so apparently there was a photo coming. There was a photo that cropped up of William Harper Jackson, formerly known as what was his name from The Good Place? Uh,
Chidi?
Chidi. Yeah. Apparently they're dating, right? I didn't know that until I
Who's
saw that
dating?
photo. William Harper Jackson and the actress who plays Alice.
Oh, really?
So he was on set that like he was on set and there was photos of him in the cast and it kind of everybody in wrestling terms popped from that because they were like, oh, is he going to show up? What character is he going to play? And I saw something real quick like, oh, that's going to be who Mephisto is. I'm like, okay. I didn't post or comment, but I was thinking to myself, okay, stop. First of all, that's not going to happen. And then like a couple comments later, I saw someone say like, no, they're dating. That's probably why he was there. Blah blah blah. Oh, okay,
Right, right.
that makes more sense. But I
All right,
think
so I found sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think it was speculated that maybe that's how she ended up losing her job is because she was there trying to interview him. She couldn't hear him, but other people could, and she couldn't get the sense of what was going on, and that might have at least started her downward spiral, her losing her job as a police officer.
That's a good theory. So I found the part of the interview that says that they cut this scene for pacing where Alice is interviewing Mr. Kaplan and he keeps saying Billy's name and she can't hear it. She keeps trying to write it down and she can't hear it. She said it's a great scene. They're terrific performers. It's just one of the many moments like it's a pacing thing, and this is sort of a double beat. She also doesn't really see his face because he's covered in blood and he's in the back seat. So she doesn't really recognize Billy because of that. Billy doesn't know her because he was unconscious. And Billy doesn't remember Lilia because he was William at the time. But he
Yeah,
does know Jen, and Jen's the one that shows up when he's watching like the videos about like witchcraft and stuff, right? So he does know her that way.
yeah. By
Um,
that, by,
and he
by
also
that time, he got into at some point in the next couple of years,
witchcraft.
he got into everything, and Jen's little pyramid scheme of her goop-like
Hmm.
uh, skin care regimen and all that stuff. Um, so here's a question I have, and I don't know if this matters at all. Do you think William was gay or no?
That's
And
a
do you
good
think maybe that
question.
was something that kind of and I hate to even bring something like this up or ask, but like, was that something that happened or transitioned when Billy entered his body? Or was that something he was going through trying to figure out prior to the accident?
I think there's not enough information to tell, but what I would assume is that is Billy, because that's who he is, right? Like, I don't know if we know enough about William and his previous
Iteration of
uh,
life.
iteration of life other than what we see at the very beginning. So I don't know if I would be able to say one way or another for him, but what I would believe is that that is part of just Billy, and not part of William.
So one thing you forgot to mention, right? So we're watching the scene. The accident happens, right? You hear the heartbeat
Hmm.
and everything, and then the heartbeat stops, and then he comes to, and then he starts
Yeah,
hearing a
back
couple
to
of
life.
voices. He comes back to life, but you also hear a couple of other voices. And the first thing he says when he comes to is Tommy. He screams for Tommy,
Yes.
his little brother. And that like as soon as that happened, that's kind of when it hit me like, oh, this is when Billy entered his body.
Yes. Yeah, this is if you want to put it a certain way, maybe like it, I don't know if you maybe he was like they were getting caught in the radio waves from the WandaVision hex, right? And then he found the empty vessel of William since William was dead. And he said, "Hey, his name is William, my name is Billy. This will make things very simple. I'm going to jump into his body." And
Or just the fact he's
that's how
like
it goes.
he didn't want to die, so he was like, hey, I'm he took the first thing
Yeah,
he
yeah.
could. I kind of would like to know more about what happened there as far as when what happened to Billy as far as the Westview thing and what if he was real, wasn't real, whatever the case was, but his parent, but Wanda made him up, so it was real to her. How that consciousness kind of decide what happened in whatever ethereal plane, and then he sees William's body and decides he's not done living yet and wants to go in there. Like,
Yes.
I kind of like to know more about that.
Um, yeah, I don't think we'll get much more than that, honestly. I think because then
That's
it
me
gets to
overthinking things again.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't say just that either. I think like they would have to over explain it at a certain point, and then that runs the risk of them like uh like what am I trying to say here? Where then like later on they might end up creating a simulation like a situation similarly, and then people be like,
But
well,
they're
why don't they
boxed
just
into a
ride the
corner.
waves again and get
Yeah.
into yeah. So I think it's left going to be left a little open so they can just be like, well, this happened that one time, and in case if it has the possibility of happening again and they don't want it to, they can be like, oh, that was the one time thing with Billy or something like
It, they're going to go with the Apple thing. It just works. It just works.
yeah. And this was just really great confirmation that we've been waiting for. We thought it was confirmed last week a bit, right? Because of them promoting, and that's the thing too. Like they released the mid-season trailer, I think, on Monday before I got the episode up, and it was like with a thing confirming like this is Billy Maximoff, and here's the mid-season trailer, and there's a line from Agatha in this episode that makes an appearance in that trailer, and then that's when you see the car crash and stuff, and people were able to start being like, yes, this is all getting confirmed with these theories. We heard about the car accident with the Eastview stuff, I think, in the first episode.
We did
So that was
because
yeah,
didn't in the first episode didn't they say there weren't like many murders or dead people in issue in years or something like that? And she
yeah,
brings
yep,
up there was an accident a couple years ago of some little kid or something like that, or a car
yep.
crash.
So that's what they're referring to. So we got confirmation that all those theories were correct. Another confirmation we got was a theory of mine that I had from the first episode, right? Which was obviously we knew Mrs. Hart was not a witch, and we knew they needed a certain number of witches. So it was like, who is that fifth member? I thought it was Billy because of him coming down at the time, like being in the house at the time and when they're singing Witch's Road and the door opens. And we got confirmation with that because we thought the Black Heart was Rio related for a couple reasons that Lilia had written down, but it was actually a reference to Billy. One, because he had the sigil, so she couldn't write down his name,
Yeah.
and because apparently Billy's
Boy,
boyfriend
Boyce comes back.
uses the black heart emoji, and that is who it is. So that was a really cool confirmation on what that was.
So when we talked earlier in the series about how people kept bringing up this was like the gayest show that Disney had done, and we kind of speculated like, how are they really going to do it? I think that this episode kind of cements that.
Yeah,
There was a lot of interaction between Billy and what is his boyfriend's name there? I can't remember.
it was Teddy.
Yeah. Um, there was a lot more
Teddy
interactions
or
between the
Eddie?
two of them than I anticipated, especially showing on a Disney show for teenagers. But hey, it worked.
Yes. Yeah, they did a very good job with that. His boyfriend Eddie, that's his name. Um, and uh, good job by the way, parents being very supportive of their son who's not actually their son. I'll tell you though, that was such a heartbreaking scene when he comes home for the first time and he's obviously reading their minds and they are going through one. You think your
Trauma.
mind is a safe space, right? You think your mind is a safe space, but he's hearing this. But also, they're not thinking anything like untoward either. I think it's very like what I would probably be thinking. What if he never snaps out of this? What if he never remembers? What if and you know he never will because obviously it's not him. But for them, they just think he had amnesia from the
Yeah,
accident. They don't know
got
that their
bumped on
son
the
is dead.
head, and maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't, but he's still our son, and we still love him. So
Right, right. And I think even if they find out that he's really Billy, I think that they would probably still care for him because one, it's in the body of their son. So I think they would be like kind of having a hard time justifying that it's not him because it's his body. So I think they would have a hard time with that. But I do think that they would probably um,
I don't
they
know.
might
I
actually just
think
think he's crazy. I don't know if they would actually think that he's
I don't know.
honestly
Remember, we're in the MCU, so
true.
we get later on. One of the funniest things I got was when he was talking to Eddie about the Westview anomaly, and they said, "Oh, it was an Avengers training exercise that went wrong." Right,
Yes. Yeah.
but
The
so
official
we
story.
get yeah, that's the story that gets put out to people, right? Okay, cool. But so they know about witches and they know all these other things that are happening in the world. We've talked about before aliens and gods and all this other stuff. I don't know much about the Jewish faith and religion, and I don't know much about the Jewish faith and religion, uh, how it what it thinks or it interacts with the mystic arts and mysticism and witchcraft and stuff like that, right? I think it's a whole different road you can go down. But I think if at some point you find out their son isn't their son because the soul of somebody, your son actually died that day during the accident, and the soul of another being entered that person's body. Maybe there's a chance they do just accept it because it is still the vessel of their son. But I can imagine there's a lot of pain and heartache that will go along with that because at this point it's been 3 years, right? So everything that's happened during the last 3 years has kind of been a lie. Um, you don't know what their thoughts are on a lot of other different things that have happened in the MCU as it is, right? Especially with everything that happened during the Westview anomaly and with Agatha and with the Scarlet Witch and all that other stuff. I think that this could be one of those things. If it ever came out, it could end up splitting that family up because I could see one
Well,
of them not really wanting. That's not my. See one of them saying that's not my son. Like I can
mhm.
imagine, especially for dramatic effect, television wise, I can see that is not my son. No, we still love him. Blah blah blah. No, that is not my son, and I can imagine that would be painful to deal with.
Right. I think, yeah, I think that one, when you mentioned like the witchcraft stuff, I think they're a little open to it because they let him like have it all over his room and stuff, right? Like I feel like if they were really strict, they would be like I'm talking when I was growing up. There were I grew up Catholic, and my parents were not like strict Catholic the way some people are. Like some people in my church wouldn't be able to play Pokemon because of evolution. They wouldn't be able to watch Harry Potter because of witchcraft. Like they're at least not like that strict. So that's a good plus because his room dramatically changes from when we saw it at 13 to when he's 16.
I can imagine though they could be saying, "Oh, this is just a phase." I can imagine that's a conversation the two of them would have.
Yeah. Well, I would also
Possibly.
think though that like let's say he does tell them that he's Billy and not William at some point. I think they would think he's having some sort of identity crisis just because of the accent still. Like I think they would just think his memory still hasn't come back because the doctors say he's healthy. And the like I don't think that I think they'd kind of shut down that it's actually like another soul in the body.
Well, no,
Even
what I'm
though they
saying
are in
is,
the MCU. I
if
just
at
think they
some
wouldn't be like,
if at some point it comes out and they do find out that like that's not their son, I think that's when things go haywire. Um, I don't think that's something they could. I can imagine, and I've watched way too much television, which is why I'm imagining this. I can imagine one of
yeah.
the two parents uh, during this
That'd be
time
the
maybe
very
picking up
stereotypical way to do it, yeah, or for
one of the two
television.
parents picking up little clues and then going down a rabbit hole and nobody believing them. You
If
know,
this show was like a 5 season show, that would be a season long arc. That would that would happen. But
yeah.
unfortunately, we get one season of these, and then we're done. Um, all right, so he is now going to meet up with a user from Reddit who was apparently in the Westview anomaly back in the day, and
Oh, before that,
this is our good friend. Yep.
let's
Okay, go ahead.
rewind. Let's rewind a couple seconds. So, uh, we get some interactions with him and Eddie, and then they go up to his room and they're talking about what's been going on. So apparently, he's able to, uh, probably through some cell phone recordings, right? He's able to catch some things. He's been doing some research on a lot of this,
Yes, he does his own research.
trying to figure out what's happened.
He
Um,
doesn't buy the official line from the government or the Avengers. He does his own research.
yeah, but and then he eventually tracks down that, hey, another spell was put up because these are runes. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
where he gets through some, like I said, through some video footage
And you can
of,
see these in WandaVision as well. You can see the
yeah, we
runes in the thing. Yeah, yeah.
this happens during the fight between Wanda
And Agatha.
and Agatha when she ends up putting the runes up in Westview that keeps Agatha there in her own little world. I don't know, in her own little imagination or whatever it is. I don't know. Um, yeah, and then that's when you see as well. There's like a chat window open behind him, and as I'm watching this, this is another thing I kept trying to like rewind and like pause, see if I could get some more info on this and that, but you couldn't really see much with the couldn't really see much during that conversation. But good boyfriend though, because he says, yeah, let's go meet some sketchy dude from Reddit in a parking garage. I'll go with you.
Yeah, at least he goes with them and isn't like, I'm going to let you go ahead and do this on your own. But yeah, so they go meet the sketchy Reddit user whose name is what? Bonerific69, spelled with an H, because this is Ralph Boner from WandaVision, played by Evan Peters.
Good
He's
job getting
back.
that. Yeah, making that connection, getting him back. That was awesome.
Jack Schaefer said she had 3 things on her list when it came to what she wanted to do for the follow up to WandaVision. And it was the 3 things were Let me find it. I had it here in this interview. I have to find the boner part again. Okay. So she said that she had three things on a checklist. They were going to have music, I guess referring to Down the Witch's Road, right? We were going to
Yep.
have big costume moments, meaning like the 70s and 80s stuff,
Yeah.
right? And then we were going to have Evan Peters. Those were her three things she wanted on her list, and she got all three. And she wanted to go back and bring Ralph back into it. I think part of it was because she wanted to kind of uh, poke the needle a little bit more because of how people reacted to that. Um, like the interviewer says something like, "Oh, I thought maybe it was going to be like Mephisto or something," and she was like, "No, I always choose Ralph Boner over Mephisto."
So also great thing later. We'll get to Agatha wearing the Boner Family Reunion T-shirt. So I
Yes,
saw something
pitch a
there. They
tent.
they specifically made that. They need to sell that T-shirt now. They
Oh, they will.
specifically they specifically made, like, I guess I saw an interview where they were talking about, as we'll get to, Agatha ends up like kidnapping Ralph, right?
Right.
She's living in the house with him or whatever. And they're like, okay, what kind of guy does this guy look like? And and it was brought up the Boner family or whatever. So yeah, they would have like those custom made T-shirts for a family reunion. Yes, we need to. I'm surprised there. I'm sure there might be some knockoff somewhere online. I haven't looked. I don't want to look because I'm not getting the Mouse's lawyers coming after me. But
Probably Etsy or Redbubble probably already has them up. Yeah.
yeah, but they need to. They definitely need to sell those T-shirts.
Yeah. So I was very shocked to actually see the return of Ralph Boner. I thought there were some people saying that he was supposed to come back. And I was like, really? Like, how would you fit him in like this? Having him be like the guy who was actually
Because he was just an
willing.
actor in WandaVision, right? Like that's when everything got broken or
Yes.
whatever. He said he was just an actor. He was paid. He was like a community actor. He was paid to go do that part or whatever, and that was it.
He was paid to act like he was Quicksilver because. So let's flash back a bit to set it up for people that maybe weren't around in 2021. But there was big theories going on in 2021 because of Mephisto and because of Evan Peters. Evan Peters, if people don't know, played the role of uh, Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, in the Fox X-Men movies, which shared the character with Avenger. So because of him being an Avenger, but also being an X-Man, they had split rights to the characters of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. So
Did
Disney and
Scarlet
Fox
Witch
had
ever
to.
did Scarlet Witch ever show up in the X Men universe or no? Did Wanda ever show
Yes,
up over
but
there?
I she did as Evan Peters' little sister dressed up as like a little witch. Like that's it. Like she was probably 5. She wasn't like
Okay.
old enough. So they had to split rights to these two characters and they decided they were going to use Quicksilver and, Avengers Age of Ultron used Quicksilver. And this was a year apart. Days of Futures Past was 2014 and Avengers Age of Ultron 2015. I think part of the deal was probably I don't know how accurate this is that they have to select one because what ends up happening is Quicksilver dies, right, in Age of Ultron, and they go forward with Scarlet Witch, and then they don't ever really show Scarlet Witch in X-Men and they use Pietro. So I'm assuming that was kind of part of the split.
Or maybe it was the aspect of Fox got the rights to the character name of Quicksilver, right? But Disney ended up with the rights of Pietro.
Right.
You see
And
what I'm
there
saying?
was some
Like,
differences like Pietro, has the accent in the Marvel films. In the X-Men films, he's named Peter and he doesn't have the accent, right? Like he is a
yeah. So
little different.
maybe when they split, that's how they made the split. Because I don't remember. I just remember him. I remember the name Pietro. I remember Elizabeth Olsen had that great accent, which honestly I do love.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making fun of that. She was great with that accent. Um, but they never really brought up the aspect. They never brought up a name for him. The only name he got was Pietro, and
Yeah,
then
I
he
think
did
you're
die.
right. So there was the theory because we knew we were heading into the multiverse because Marvel had already made their presentation of like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is going to be happening, blah, 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 blah. So people thought that, oh, we're getting multiverse Pietro showing up as her brother. Like, that's cool. And then people were very disappointed to find out it's just Evan Peters as Ralph Boner as Pietro, right? Because he was living with Agatha. She made him be her husband or whatever.
He
She
killed
paid him or whatever
Sparky.
to show up.
He's the one who killed
Yes.
Sparky.
Yes, due to well, she made him, right? I think that's kind of
Yeah,
implied because he gets all upset, saying that she made me, kill this
she
dog.
made
But
me
in
kill
the
a dog.
Agatha song, she says she killed him, so
She
she's taking
technically she
ownership
did.
on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so people were very upset when they found that out. So they kind of go back to it, and I think it works even more now. I was fine with it in WandaVision as well, but I think it works even more now because he is just a guy who is terrorized by what happened 3 years ago. And he is now the one that's able to set Billy on the correct path to Agatha Harkness. So I thought that was very well worked out as a reason to bring him back. It didn't feel like we just need to bring him back to bring him back. They
just for
actually have a
shock
reason
value.
why he's there. Yeah,
Yeah. It, I thought the parking garage scene was great. I thought
yeah.
meeting some shady dude we find out is the boner man there was fantastic. Um, the aspect of him sitting there not knowing that Billy can read his mind, right? Because he even brings up he brings up the kids, the little fast one in his mind reading little freak brother or whatever he says, right? And then as he's trying to walk away, he's like, "Don't ask about Agatha. Don't ask about Agatha. Don't ask about Agatha." So, like, that freaks him out and everything, and that's kind of what sets Billy on the path of like true knowledge of trying to figure out, hey, what's really going on here.
And that confirmed to Billy, I think, that he is Billy, right? Was because he says about how there's the mind reading one. So then I think he's realizing, oh, that must be me because I'm able to to mind
Yeah.
read. Like it sets him on that path where he thinks I'm Billy Maximoff. And seeing the next scenes where he goes to Agatha's, and um, we see a lot of the scenes from the first episode over again, but with his perspective, was really funny. Like the fact that her gun was like the nozzle for the
Hold on.
hose.
We got to rewind again. We
Mhm.
forgot the whole internet search thing.
Yeah, when we find out she's Jolene.
So, look, Dolly Parton's a beautiful woman, right? Um, and a lot of people have always said, especially Dolly Parton in the '70s, she was a fox, as they used to say back in the day. Um, like what kind of like who cheats on Dolly Parton? What are you going after? What does this woman look like? Agatha Harkness and Catherine Hahn? I can kind of see that. Depending on your taste, like I get it. Yeah, we find out she's Jolene. We find out she survived the Titanic.
Yes.
We find out she might have survived like the Hindenburg disaster. Um, hold on. There's I took some. I actually took some photos of what we see during this whole thing, right? Um, so we find out that she's been alive since the Salem witch trials, and there's
Yeah.
information that people. Well, one, there's no information for Agatha Harkness, so he has to actually do like an image search or whatever
Mhm.
to find this information out, and that's where we see all these other things of the back of
And then
Dolly Parton.
finds like the dark web, I guess, right? Because then it's like there is stuff like blogs where people are talking about, oh, the infamous Agatha Harkness and stuff like that.
yeah, so we get that, and I want to know more about this myth of Agatha Harkness. Like, I still would love to find out what happened to Agatha between like the Salem witch trials and all this other stuff. And I love the fact that another thing I love, Disney has found a way to incorporate a lot of these shows and characters into these things we have no knowledge about. So we have the
Hmm.
fact that we find out Loki was what's his name from the airline there that hijacked the airline and
Oh yeah,
disappeared.
DB Cooper. Yes.
We find out Loki's DB Cooper, right? We find out someone else. I think uh was it Owen Wilson's character was or someone from Loki was one of the guys that escaped from Alcatraz, right? And then we find out Agatha is
Yes.
Jolene and has survived the Titanic and all these other little things. And I love how they're just connecting it to all these little plots throughout history. Um, so I took a couple photos, right? And a lot of stuff that they had there when he's looking up sigils. Like he eventually found the sigil item in his hand that she left in the coat,
Yeah.
and he's trying to figure out what it means, and he's had it forever. So one of the notes on the blackboard is destructible sigils. Activated by being destroyed, creates a burst of energy that gives the sigil power. Write, carve, or singe sigil into paper, wood, food, or object, and destroy by fire or force. Then you got a couple. He's got some pictures of like different runes and what they mean, including like protection, strength, and a few other things, including something that looks like it was made from the periodic table. So something about alchemicals. Permanent sigils. Active for long periods of time. Sigils can be made into art pieces or hidden in other objects. Can be recharged to strengthen and revitalize the active energy. So he's been on the right track for a long time. He just couldn't piece all this information totally together, right? And eventually he
Hmm.
starts getting little stuff piece by piece of all this information. And I imagine that might be why his room looks the way it looks. It's very eclectic. You had a lot of different things. You had like a craft poster, and I saw a Twitter thread where it had all these little Easter eggs of all these little things that were in the posters and stuff in his room, and it cataloged the whole thing. Um, and it was pretty cool. But honestly, that could just be like a I don't want to say weird, but a weird teenager's poster, weird teenager's room during these times of different things they'd just be into. But that also could have
Yeah.
been done to hide some stuff like that of like he's looking into witchcraft and he's looking into these sigils and what they mean. And at some point, like I said last week, sometimes the best way to hide stuff is to put it out, in plain sight. It's there in plain sight, but there's so much other stuff around it. His mom probably just doesn't go up in his room very much anymore. He probably does his own laundry because he's at the time he was 13 when all this happened. Which brings
Right.
us back to that he was 13 when some bad stuff happened to him. Conversation he had with Alice a few episodes ago.
Yeah, he's
Um,
referring to both of him, right? He's referring to William and Billy because something bad happened to Billy,
okay,
but also for William, it's the accident.
how old was Billy when all this happened? Though we know William was
Uh,
13.
I think Billy was because they got aged up pretty quickly. They were uh how fast they were growing. I don't know how old they were at the end of WandaVision, but they were approaching like 11, 12, 13. I would think.
Yeah. Plus, I know that whole thing was messed up because she went from like being normal to being pregnant within like a couple of minutes or a couple seconds,
Yes.
and then the children grew at a rapid, accelerated pace. So
Right.
that's probably too much into that.
So like technically he's
He was
3,
13.
but
Yeah,
because of how fast he grew, but also like actual body wise, probably around 13.
but I just love all these little connections that they made. And then yeah, so he decides to drive into Westview, right? because
Hmm.
he figures like, okay, he's gonna meet up with Agatha, or he's gonna break the spell over Agatha or something. And eventually he sees that like she's just leading this normal life. But in order to break the spell, he needs to get something of hers. And then that's where we get this whole everything that happened in the first couple of episodes. I think it was episode 2 when all was it episode 1 or 2 when all this happened?
Episode 1 is when he wakes her up from the thing. So I believe, and then like episode 2 is when I think we first see the sigil. So part
Yeah.
of it is from 1, part of it is from 2.
But this
So
was great. So I remember as this was playing out, like it took me a minute and I was like, oh, this is what actually was happening during the first episode. Yeah, it was the first episode because that's when she was still in her detective phase. That's when
yeah,
she was still, and who was the neighbor there? He was like, yeah, you went through a true crime phase for the last couple of years. So we just played
yeah.
along. But she's got the hose handle, the hose nozzle as a gun on her. She's using that as a gun on her hip and everything, and she's doing all this stuff in her living room, and it's just oh,
When
this
he
was
asks for
just
the
so fun.
water and she just kicks him. She like gets up to get him water and then just ends up kicking him. He's like, "Ow!"
The greatest thing, and I saw this posted so many times on Twitter, was at some point when she has him taped up and she goes to throw him in her closet. He's like, "No, I don't want to go back in the closet,"
Yes.
and it was just so great. And I'm like, "This is awesome." They did a fantastic job with 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 these scenes right here.
One thing that I thought was very telling is what we got the scene with the sigil from episode 2 where she asks his name, right? So that's like I believe the beginning of 2, end of episode 1. And he says, "My name." Somebody pointed this out online, and it got me thinking. It says, "My name is William Kaplan," right? And then she can't hear that. She's like, say again or whatever, right? And he says, "I'm Billy Maximoff." So I thought that was very telling on how he sees himself, right? Like, my name is William Kaplan. I am Billy Maximoff. Like, it
See,
was
I
him finally, like,
see,
acknowledging who he really is.
I got something different from that. I got that she was able. So I got the fact that she was able to recognize he wasn't who he was from the get go, right?
Hmm.
Um, and to me, it appeared as if when he said, "I'm William Kaplan," she's like, "Really now?" Like, so to me, my impression of it was, for whatever reason, she wasn't affected by the sigil. She was able to see and hear both of those names.
No, she wasn't. Because when we see it from her point of view in the first episode, we see the sigil covering.
But I think that was done. Remember how I brought up maybe that was done just so us as the audience wouldn't get that information early?
Right, but I don't think that's the case because the whole point of the sigil is it protects him from every witch. So in this point, it's us hearing what he said from his point of view in this scene.
Okay, I'm
Because
still
like
staying.
because then like later in that episode, she's trying to get his background and she can't hear it again, and she's trying to turn up the radio, thinking like, is it just my hearing or is it I can't hear him? And it's the sigil protecting that too. Um,
See, I would love to see more info on that. I'd love to see what he actually said during that conversation now, especially now.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm still, maybe it's just me. I'm still sticking with, I'm stubborn. I'm still sticking with, she
Well,
was
because
able
she
to hear
says
that.
this episode that she didn't know for sure until like now, um, about who he really was. So if she had actually heard him, she would have known who he was. So she said she had like the sneaking suspicion, right, that he wasn't who he was saying he was. But or that he was related to Wanda, I guess. But she wasn't sure until like now. So okay, let's get to the end here because we kind of catch up to where we left off last week.
Agatha crawls out the mud.
She crawls out of the mud. So did he really kill the other ones? Like, or do we find out? You think that they are alive, and
I don't
she
know how to
thinks that they're
answer that. I don't know how to answer that.
because that would be that's pretty dark. I guess. Well, not like dark, but I mean like he's our hero character, the guy that I think we're supposed to be siding with on this.
That's an interesting point. So this goes back to the whole aspect as well of, remember when we talked about something before, and I brought up the whole Apple doesn't let bad guys use their devices, but we
Mm-hmm.
see him using an iPhone at some point in the episode. So yeah, but I think a couple episodes ago I talked about maybe he was the villain of the whole show. We wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
figure, so that goes out the window. Um,
True. I thought I read something recently too about that weird rule and that maybe it's not as relevant anymore. I'll have to see if I can dig that up because I thought I was watching something recently where the villain was using an iPhone, and I thought that was strange. I can't remember what it was. So I don't know if maybe that's because that was up a thing. That was at least a thing during Knives Out, which is not
it
that old of a movie.
Yeah, it's been something like for quite a few years where
Yeah.
they couldn't use it, and people have been able to figure out villains of movies, just from stuff like that, the villains that were hidden. But now people are finding ways to work around it. One, they probably just won't use a lot of Apple products in certain movies if they need to keep someone hidden like that, because it's just easier
Right. Right.
to, if everybody say used an Android device, right? Whether it's a Samsung or, depending where it is, a Huawei or whatever it is. It's just easier, you know. Plus, you don't have to deal with like the green and blue bubble thing and all that other stuff. Um,
I think the way I would do it if I'm Ryan Johnson going forward is for like the next Knives Out movie, it'd just be like Daniel Craig is the only one that has the iPhone and everybody else is using Androids, and that leaves everybody open as a suspect.
well, speaking of which, apparently they're not very happy right now, Daniel Craig and Rian Johnson. Um,
Yeah, they weren't happy, I think, in the lead up to that the new movie might not get a theatrical release.
I think they might do it just by the bare minimum number of release. Like they
That's
like
how they did with Glass Onion. They put it out for like a weekend or something.
Well, I think in order to be considered for like any awards through the Academy, I think it has to be released in so many theaters for like a week or something. There's like a minimum number of theaters it has to be. At one point, I think it used to have to be like one theater for a weekend. So there's a couple weird movies that would have like released that have released in like just one theater just for a period of time, just to so it can.
They're also talking about doing away with that restriction because of the rise of streaming movies.
I think that might be something they might have to look at. Unless they make a whole other set of Academy Awards for streaming only aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Like you
The
have,
Webbies.
I mean, well, no, so maybe the Golden Globes or something would be the first to try this. So you have like in the Golden Globes, you have Best Actor in a comedy and drama,
Yeah.
in shorts or in whatever they're called, uh, limited series or whatever. Excuse me, right? Best
Mm-hmm.
actor or actress in a streaming only movie. Best supporting actor or best supporting actress in a streaming only film. Maybe that's something they could look at too. I don't know, but I don't know if there's really, I don't know. That might be too much. Because remember, a couple of years ago, they were talking about doing an Academy Award for popular movies, but it never got off the ground, or I think they canceled it or something.
Right,
It
right.
still hasn't. Because there was the aspect of, these movies that make all this money basically can only be are only looked at for like music or special effects or makeup, and that's it. But the actual people, the actors and actresses don't get any, or director don't get any credit by through the Academy Awards. But it's starting to change a little bit.
So he breaks the sigil. So now he can freely, you know, people can know who he is. He can talk, say his name, um, and we're left with supposedly just Billy and Agatha as they are trying to get down the road because he wants to find Tommy. He wants to find Tommy Maximoff. So, I read a theory, Casey, or like I don't know if it was actually like a real theory, but you know how people will do that thing where they'll purposely get something wrong when confronting somebody to see if they correct themselves? Do
Yeah,
you think Agatha did that on purpose, or did she just not remember Tommy's name? Like, did she say you're going to find Toby so that way he would be like Tommy and be like, "Damn, yeah, that is what I'm doing."
I think there's a chance that she's manipulative like that. I think there's a chance. Um,
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm still sticking with. I'm. I don't want to say upset. I'm a little upset that he's searching for Tommy and not his mom. But to me, that strengthens even more that I think we'll get a glimpse of Wanda before this series ends. I'm still not getting out. I'm not getting out of this hole I dug myself.
I think it's interesting because there was a rumor I heard that they're doing a spin-off to find Tommy, but this is what the show is about. So I don't know if that's just inaccurate or if, like you said,
Well,
we
no,
get
no,
to the
no.
end and he finds Wanda instead or what.
Well, see, this that's not what the show. This show is about. This show is about Agatha and her traveling down the witch's road to get whatever it is that she really wants. Now,
Right, but I'm
apparently, when
saying what
you
his purpose is. So if they both get to the end, do they both get what they want? Like that's what I need to know.
or maybe it could be one of two things. Maybe that's not what he really wants. That's what he says he wants, but it's not what he really wants. Or B, when he gets there, it shows him where Tommy is, but he still has to find Tommy. Like I don't think Tommy will like the physical version of Tommy will be there, but we're still in the whole multiverse saga, right? So there's the whole aspect of it could show him where Tommy's soul went or whose body Tommy inhabited, and now he still has to track that down. Interesting thing when he brings up and he can finally say his name, and one of the things that Agatha says is, "Yes, every witch with a beating heart can hear you now." Oh boy, that line set all the Agatha people on Twitter crazy because I'm one of them. I think that means somewhere out there, Wanda just heard that.
If she is alive and has a beating heart, right? It is quite funny that she went all the through the multiverse to find her son and her kids, and one of them was literally a one town over.
It is, but like, so the
But the
end
sigil
of,
protected him, so she wouldn't know. So obviously,
but I hadn't thought of that. But also at the end of WandaVision, we just get her. What is it? Where is she at the end of WandaVision where she's reading the Darkhold?
I think she's just in a forest mountain area. I don't know if she's at a specific place.
Is it like a place, like her own reality she made somewhere else again or something?
I think it's just further up in. I don't know if they said where it is. It kind of looked like Greenland or something, Iceland. I don't know.
She's isolated somewhere, and then that's when she hears her sons, right, calling out for her. And that kind of starts
Yeah.
her out on the whole that starts her on her whole quest to try and find her two sons. Um, I don't know, maybe you know the fact that they're out there in other universes somewhere, right?
Yeah. And she was
I,
right. Like she could have went and got other, like we see that play out. Like she could have, yes, gotten the other kids from the other universes because that is a possibility. But like her actual kids, at least one of them was just a town over in Eastview.
so so
Right after.
so I've read that rumor as well. I saw that rumor that in like 2026 or something like that, 2027, somewhere in that range, it'll be, I forget the name of whatever they said, but it'll be him on his search for Tommy, and then that will lead into uh man, I've been hitting the head too many times. Um, Scarlet Witch movie afterwards.
Yeah, I keep hearing the Scarlet Witch movie too. I just wonder like what you like what's her story like going forward when she has the kids. And we have a Vision series coming up too. So this whole family could get back together and have adventures together as well. But
Agatha
just
taunting
curious.
him. Agatha taunting him with what is it he's trying to find, because he's like, "Mommy's dead. Vision's been pulled apart, or he's like scrap metal or something."
Yeah,
Like, and then
yeah.
and then the fact that he tries to use his power on her, but like he can't use it. I hate to say it. I thought there was a joke coming there that never materialized.
Performance issues.
Yeah, I thought there'd be a joke like, "You're kind of young for that to be happening, aren't you?"
Yeah. So I'm guessing that's something with his power he has to learn now as well, right? Is how to more accurately control it. He got sent over the edge last week and started using it and couldn't control it, it seems. And now when he wanted to use it again, he couldn't.
Do you think it has something to do with his emotions, being able to harness his emotions in the right way?
Yeah, probably something like that.
So, what do you think is next? Since we have
We
a
got three
singular
left.
episode next week, and then we have
Two-part
the,
finale.
the two-part finale. What do you think is next for next week? 'Cause we
Well, we
still
have to
haven't
have
seen
another
Rio.
trial.
We still haven't seen Rio. Rio's been missing
Yes.
for another episode.
Yes. We have to have another trial. Maybe we haven't had Billy's trial yet, right? We've had Agatha's last week. We had Jen's before that, and Alice's before that. Um, if Lilia is still alive, we would have her trial, and then we would have, I would assume, Billy's trial, and then I would assume his is at the end. And I do think we just see Billy and Agatha make it out of this alive.
Yeah,
But how they structure all that stuff, I don't know. Like, we didn't have a trial this week. That seems to be how it goes, right? So I would assume there's a trial next week. And then in the first part of the finale, no trial. The second part of the finale, a trial is kind of how I think that would be paced. But I don't know. Because they were developed as all separate episodes. They're just going to be saying 2 episodes premiere on, the last week. So I would assume they both have different writers. So I'd assume episode 9 is like finale feelings, while like episode 8 probably would just feel like a penultimate episode, not like a 2-hour finale type of situation.
this this was the best episode so far, and I've really loved the show. I don't think there's been a bad episode yet for me.
No, I agree.
Um, but yeah, this whole thing, everything pretty much leading up to it, and especially now, this is one of those episodes where once you go back and rewatch uh, the series again with what everything takes a whole different meaning now.
Yes, and I also think that it's wild. Like, I don't know if we've ever had something like this before, where like we've had what I'm thinking of, like how much this continues from WandaVision with the same creative team. Like we usually don't get that type of stuff in television. The closest I would say is probably Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but those each had like six, 5 to 6 seasons each. Um, in this case, it's like WandaVision is essentially season one, and this show is essentially season two. And we have some shows like that with uh, like the what's the shows I'm thinking of, like anthology shows like Fargo or American Horror Story, but those are like
Yeah,
very
American Horror
different
Story.
stories. Those are different stories
But
each season.
eventually they are connected. We find
Oh,
eventually
okay,
like there are characters. At least with American Horror Story, there are characters. A lot of the actors and actresses come back and play separate characters in each season,
right, right.
but apparently there has been a way, and there have been they are each season is all tied together, at least with the original American Horror Story. Now he came out
Hmm.
with American Horror Stories with his, which is like an anthology thing of like separate. Each episode is a whole separate story that kind of does their own
Like a
thing.
Twilight Zone type of thing. Each episode's
But
different.
yeah, with the original American Horror Story aspect of like Murder House, and then there's a witches one in New Orleans, and there's a
Mm.
whole few different aspects like that. There's one set in a carnival or something, but they are all connected in different ways.
But I think this is like very. This is something you only get in like these connected universes where you have full like character development from Agatha from WandaVision into Agatha All Along, and then we're getting Billy from WandaVision into Agatha All Along, and then I would assume Billy shows up. Let's say they do that spinoff. Billy shows up and continues his development in a third show. Like it's all very different. Like it's like movies, but also this show feels like an actual TV show, which I very commend it for.
We also got another appearance of Mrs. Hart again.
Yes, yeah, when she's the one that stops Billy, right? As he's running out. I think a lot of the actors said that this was their favorite one of the season too. I think like the actress for Alice said that, and I'm assuming because they got to play their role in this as like and seeing their background of the character while you're also getting so much information from the other side of stuff with Billy. So curious to see where we go from here because a lot of people I think had this as their favorite episode so far in the show. So look, what I'll say too is I'm looking for like just keep Jack Schaefer employed at Marvel and just let her keep doing shows like WandaVision and Agatha All Along, and she can build out this whole witch side of the universe, I think, and
Where
keep
does
people
Vision
interested
Quest
in
fit
that.
into this? Is she doing Vision
So
Quest, or is someone else
I
doing Vision
don't think
Quest?
she is. I think the guy from 12 Monkeys is doing Vision. Yeah, he also did the Star Trek Picard season 3, but I think that they're doing Vision Quest. I don't even know if it'll keep that name. I like the name, but I don't know if it'll keep the name. But I'm assuming she'll be some sort of involved or consulting if it has anything to do with this side of stuff. But I'm thinking it'll mostly follow the White Vision, and I'm not sure how much they'll really intersect with these characters. Maybe another project afterwards would have
Now,
her
in the
involved.
comics, what's the difference between the original Vision and the White Vision?
I don't actually know too much about Vision comic book side.
Okay, never mind then.
There was I, I think it's just more of a as we saw in WandaVision, White Vision was kind of like the actual body of Vision, I think, like remade like refixed and like they were reprogramming him while like the Vision that Wanda created in her universe was like a more continuation of his body and spirit from of Age of Ultron and Civil War where he was in Infinity War, where he loved her and had that connection. He's more of a regular robot as White Vision as we saw in WandaVision. So I wonder what they'll do with that. We'll see, I guess. All right. Well, that'll wrap us up here, I think. Next week, we'll talk the episode 7, which we don't have a name or anything for. And then we will have the week after that the finale coverage, which is the final 2 episodes, which premiere on October 30th. And we will try to get that episode out, the Sunday after the show premieres, which is pretty typical. All right, you can follow us at all of our social medias, which is in the show description in your podcatcher or on the YouTube video. If you click description, has all that information there where you can reach us if you want to share your thoughts, theories, or feelings about Agatha All Along. Yeah, and as I said before, we have a cool episode that's coming up with comic book character superhero suits, which I've not edited yet. That's probably coming, I would assume, closer to the finale of this show or afterwards, just to give us something to talk about after the show's done. And then we also have, I believe Ron is going to do something specific for Venom The Last Dance, which I'm not planning on seeing. So I think he might have somebody on to talk Venom The Last Dance, which is
When does
the
that come
third
out?
Venom film. This month. I don't know the actual
That came out a lot
date.
quicker than I thought. I figured that would be like a next year movie or something.
Let's see. It is releasing this Friday, the 25th.
Because I hadn't heard anything about another Venom movie, and then all of a sudden, in the last couple of weeks, it just popped up. Like, I mean, I don't really follow it, so maybe that's why.
They're ramping up the promotion for it. But look, I saw Let There Be Carnage, and I said, let there be no more of these. And I am not planning to go see The Last Dance. That's one I'll catch later. But, Ron is super psyched for Venom stuff, so he's going to be talking that. All right, that'll wrap us up here. Have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next time talking episode 7, Agatha All Along.